Hi, my name is Amy Magnus and I work for A.N. Deringer. Today I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about a new law that's passed. It's called the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. We use the expression TFTEA, Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act, TFTEA. It's the Act of 2015, but it was signed into law in 2016. And in this law, there is quite a lot, more than I can talk to you about in this short video. But there are a few things that I thought that I would point out to you. I do believe that CBP is looking a little bit more on the enforcement part than they are on the facilitation part. But there are good things in the facilitation part. So to be quick about the things that are good is finally, there's drawback reform. It's going to be about 3 years out, but it's time to start planning for it. Under this act, drawback is going to be considerably easier to file. And if you aren't filing drawback and you don't know what drawback means, then you're leaving money on the table someplace if you're doing any exports at all. So you'd certainly want to find out a little bit more about drawback now and maybe gear up for being able to avail yourself for some of the benefits that TFTEA is going to offer you in the drawback arena. Another area that is in TFTEA, which might be good for some, may not be good for others, and that is that the de minimis has been raised from $200 to $800. I would say that probably goes under facilitation and maybe needs a little bit more enforcement. But what that means for those of you who don't know is that you are allowed to pass free of duty any goods that are valued under $800, with some exceptions. Very few exceptions, by the way. So you're not going to have to pay duty if you have small commercial shipments. And right now, there is a notice of public rulemaking out to get a little bit more regulations around this new provision in this law, but it's in effect right now. So if you are shipping small value shipments, you might want to give us a call and we could explain to you how you might be able to pass these goods duty free. There's also a provision for 9801, and those of you who know what that is may be interested in this, and those of you who don't know what that is, you may find that you are interested in this. 9801 provisions in the HTS, or the tariff, mean that you can pass into the United States duty-free goods that have been exported that were made in the United States. So if you export some goods and then they're returned to the United States, they can pass duty-free under 9801. Well, what TFTEA did is they expanded 9801 so it no longer has to be just goods manufactured in the United States. It can be goods that were manufactured anywhere as long as you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that those goods were actually exported from the United States. So you have to prove the export, and it has to be within 3 years. So if you can prove the export to the satisfaction of the customs officials reviewing the submission, then you can pass these things duty-free. Once again, give us a call if you're not familiar with this, but you are exporting goods and then subsequently returning them into the United States. The piece I want to talk about with TFTEA, though, and the one I want to alert all of our customers to, is that CBP seems to have been re-energized in their enforcement stance. And this law might be part of the reason for that. There is a section under TFTEA that mandates that CBP begin to be, I would say, more aggressive in their enforcement in the trade priority areas. And I'll read those areas to you in case you're importing something that falls under one of these. One is agriculture. 2 is anything that's subject to anti-dumping and countervailing duty. This is huge, and we've already seen some of the effects of the increased enforcement in this area. If you have any goods that are subject to anti-dumping and countervailing duty, or if you don't know if you have goods that are subject to anti-dumping and countervailing duty, then it's time to find out. You certainly don't want customs to be knocking at your door and be the ones to tell you. The other one is import safety. Anything that might affect the safety of the American public. The other is intellectual property rights. We refer to that as IPR. Anything at all that might have something to do with the U.S. intellectual property rights. So if there's any trademark or any patents, that kind of thing, there's increased enforcement in this area. The other one is an old one, which is to protect the revenue of the United States, which has been around for a long time. Nothing new there. Textiles. So if you're importing anything at all that has to do with textiles, that's a trade priority area. And there's some likelihood that CBP is going to be looking at that a little bit more carefully. And the final one is trade agreements. I know a lot of our customers are using NAFTA, and that's fine. Just make sure you're able to support your NAFTA claims, once again, in case there's any kind of audit or any visit from the regulatory auditors, that you're prepared to defend how it is that you made that free trade claim. So those are some pretty important things for you to understand. We've seen some activity, as I said, very recently in the enforcement area. There's another area in this TFTEA that you haven't probably heard about yet, and you haven't heard about it because it's not in effect yet. Enabling regulations need to be written, and that is that if you're importing goods into the United States, you will be legally required to verify your identity to the customs broker that's handling your business. We'll learn more about that as the regulations unfold, but generally this is going to involve some type of identification document that you will be required, in fact mandated, to submit to your broker to verify your identity. The reason for this is there have been some scam importers into the U.S., people that really didn't exist. They set up some shell type company, brought in goods that were violative, particularly in the IPR area, but not exclusively, anti-dumping as well. And then all of a sudden they disappear. So when CBP catches on to the illegal scheme, there's no importer. So one of the reasons that they want this identification is to make sure that the person who's importing goods into the U.S. does in fact exist. We'll learn more about that later, and when we do, we'll be the first to tell you about it. So that's enough for right now. I just wanted to give you a quick look at this new law called TFTEA, the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. If you have any curiosity about it at all, I highly recommend that you actually read the law itself. It's lengthy, but there's a lot of stuff buried in there. And if you have any interest at all about any of the things that I spoke to you about today, please give us a call and we'll give you more detail. Thanks.